such a refreshing experience been offered at this or any other cinema? Kia-ora, on sale at this moment in time.
Like many things, it ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. In this case, a whimper of pain from cinema goers in the UK, for whom the words full supporting programme increasingly offered the prospect of 30 minutes or more of tedium and irritation, while you waited impatiently for the film that you'd paid money to see to finally begin. The Great British Double Bill was on its last legs at the end of the 1970s as tastes changed, films became longer, and, most importantly, the government-imposed ED levy was increasingly abused. This levy, a tax incentive to encourage the production and distribution of British films, had resulted in some impressive supporting features during the 1960s and beyond. But by the end of the 1970s, the industry was in a decline that even this support couldn't halt, and by the turn of the decade, pretty much the only films benefiting from it were sex comedies and short supporting features, both of which became increasingly unambitious as time went on. The latter had a life only because there was a long tradition of supporting features in British cinema, and such habits are hard to shake. However, as Hollywood films increasingly began to run for 2 hours or more, the room for another feature film on the bill, even one that just nudged past an hour, diminished. Adding such a film to the programme would effectively bite into the number of daily screenings that were possible. A half-hour British-made short seemed a much more agreeable compromise and tax incentive until the final removal of the ED levy in 1985 and a pushback against low-quality supporting programmes finally saw these films confined to history. At the time, no one mourned their loss. It's hard to explain to anyone who grew up in the years after 1985 just how awful an experience going to the cinema could be at this time. To see a film, you'd have to wade through endless commercials, the Parping, Pearl and Dean theme and animated logo being a soul-destroying precursor to an endless parade of both regular TV ads and those just around the corner from the cinema generic commercials that often consisted of little more than blurry photos of unappetizing restaurants, grubby takeaways and downmarket nightclubs that a voiceover of varying levels of enthusiasm tried to persuade the cinema goer to pop into on the way home.
Cuddles offers you everything for that perfect night out. Dancing, cocktails, a romantic restaurant and wine bar, purpose-built video room and large garden.
The taste of India. Experience the taste of India.
The Regency Tandoori Restaurant. Private functions catered for. Takeaway service available.
Then you'd get whatever piece of crap the distributors had decided to pair with the main movie, as well as lengthy breaks between everything in order for the cinema to flog you as much junk food as possible, sometimes offered by a disinterested usherette who would stand at the end of the aisle for several minutes before finally giving up. Eventually, the main feature would reluctantly be started, though by that point many of the audience had lost the will to live, and if the film in question was a family affair, the auditorium would be full of kids hopped up on sugary treats and impatience. While some supporting films, like Black Angel, the mystical short that played alongside The Empire Strikes Back, have achieved cult status in their own right, even the best tended to feel like a bit of a slog when you were waiting for the main movie. Unlike proper double bills, where the supporting film might well be as much an attraction as the main feature, especially if it was an old classic now reissued as the bottom half of a pairing, these short supporting films were rarely even identified beforehand. At best there would be the title of a film that you'd never heard of, but more often than not you'd just see the dreaded words full supporting programme on the cinema listings. Now and then you were rewarded with a supporting film that was worth the effort. Airplane was supported by Cry Wolf, a black and white spoof of 50s horror films that had audiences roaring with laughter and set up the main film nicely. I caught moody ghost story The Lake with the Chuck Norris movie A Force of One, an inappropriate pairing perhaps, but more welcome than some turgid travelogue about places that you had no interest in visiting beforehand, and even less in afterwards. As the British feature film industry declined, pretty much the only horror films being made by the end of the 1970s were shorts, some of which, James Dearden's Panic and Diversion, the latter of which formed the basis of the later Fatal Attraction, the 3 shorts by Michael Armstrong and Stanley Long that eventually made up Scream Time, and The Orchard End Murder, were quite impressive. Monty Python produced their own supporting features. The Crimson Permanent Assurance is the best known, but my favourite is Away From It All, a spot-on satire of the sort of travelogues that Harold Bame and his ilk churned out. So accurate, in fact, that the people who caught it in support of The Life of Brian thought it really was another of those awful films to suffer through, before the narration took a rather strange turn.
And today they're crowning a queen in this little village. Hard to believe, isn't it, that these simple, happy folk are dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization as we know it. That these idyllic scenes are just a transparent charade arranged for our cameras by a propaganda department in reality bent on oppressing every aspect of spontaneity in a once happy and free people. This isn't the kind of place for us. No way, squire. Peace and tranquility, my arse. Take one photograph of the wrong building here and they're taping electrodes to your reproductive organs. So let's try Austria, a tranquil carriage ride through the Pilzenstrasse in the heart of Vienna, city of Johann Strauss and song and the highest suicide rate in Europe.
But these were rare pleasures. More often than not, you would either get a spot of film school experimentation like Night's Electric, a particularly numbing effort by Barney Broom that preceded Videodrome in my local cinema, a concert film featuring a band you couldn't stand, or most likely some plodding and unenthusiastic documentary that made you feel like Malcolm McDowell undergoing the Ludovico technique in A Clockwork Orange. No one at all wanted to sit through 30 minutes about the Dangerous Sports Club, a bunch of hooray Henrys indulging themselves in wacky activities, but many people were made to. Even the people of Coventry probably didn't care about Pete Murray Takes You to Coventry, a 1983 effort from the turgid production line of the shameless Harold Bame. Often there was not even the token gesture towards these films being actual attractions that the audience might in some way find entertaining. In the middle of one extraordinarily boring affair about some good cause or other, my local cinema actually turned the lights up so that charity chuggers could prowl the aisles, demanding money from the captive audience as the film continued as an unwelcome background noise while you sank down in your seat. This was less entertainment, more a hostage situation that essentially punished you for having the audacity to want to see a movie. Could the cinema-going experience have been any more unpleasant? It's no wonder that home video took off so quickly in the UK during the 1980s. Time, of course, is a great healer, and now there is some kitsch value to these old films. The legendary Telly Savalas looks at Birmingham is justly famous, as the star of Kojak gamely tries to convince us that he's having a whale of a time looking at municipal buildings in the Midlands, rather than sitting in a sound studio in Los Angeles counting his fee. Many of the short dramas have found new life and new audiences, because when you watch the films at home by choice rather than being forced to in a cinema while waiting for the film that you paid money to see to start, you can appreciate them more. But we should remember that the films that have been collected on BFI Blu-rays or provide kitsch comedy for modern audiences are the rare exceptions, the cream of a very curdled crop. Truth is that the programmers of the late 1970s and early 1980s were, for the most part, appalling. Cynically produced filler that neither informed nor entertained, and at no point even pretended that it wanted to, and we're better off without them. Certainly the iron grip that Hollywood blockbusters have on the UK cinema-going experience these days is regrettable, and like many people I find myself wishing for the return of the classic double bill. But the sluggish time fillers being ground out at the end of that era are not missed, and we shouldn't allow rose-tinted nostalgia for the best examples to blind us to how much of an ordeal simply going to see a movie became in the 1980s. So what are your thoughts on the full supporting programme? Are there any shorts that you remember as being either unexpectedly good or particularly awful? Let us know in the comments. And as ever, if you enjoy this sort of thing, then why not give this video the thumbs up and subscribe to the Overlooked Hotel for more of the same. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.
This is Mrs. Taylor. I'm sure somebody loves you, baby.